Here is every limited time card in Clash Royale history, starting with Shelly. Shelly was one of two temporary cards that was available in December 2018 inside the Brawl Stars Challenge, which was in celebration of Brawl Stars globally launching that week. Her mechanics were exactly the same as in Brawl Stars. She had a shotgun, and the closer she got to enemies, the more damage she dealt. If that sounds familiar, yes, we already had the Hunter by then, so what was the point of Shelly? Well, Shelly was the Hunter. She had the same stats as a Hunter, same sound effects, just a custom model. Bow. The same thing goes for Poe, which appeared in the same challenge. You and your opponent would just randomly get one every match, and in the case of Poe, he was just a reskinned magic archer. Now, a lot of the cards in this video did appear more than once, but for Poe and Shelly, they appeared for this challenge and never again. They aren't technically different cards, just reskins, but I thought it was worth a mention anyway, because this was one of the first instances of temporary cards, kind of. Super Lava Hound. This was the first super card in Clash Royale, and it launched in February 2022 with a whole season themed after the Lava Hound. Now, like most temporary cards, this was only available inside a challenge of the same name, Super Lava Hound Challenge, and it was 2 stages. All of the super card challenges were essentially the same. You had a challenge and you could pick your own deck, but the first card was locked to that temporary card, so you had to play it. In this case, the Super Lava Hound was basically a regular Lava Hound that cost 1 elixir more, but with it came a special ability that when defeated, dropped 3 fireballs near it and burst into 2 smaller Lava Hounds, and those split into 4 lava pups each. It was pretty chaotic, to say the least. For 1 elixir more, it was pretty busted. But that is the beauty of these challenges. Just a bunch of fun mayhem. Super Witch. Launched in May 2022 during the Bewitched season, this was a witch that was essentially a combination of all the witches. So she had some mechanics of the regular witch, night witch, and the mother witch. For only 1 elixir more, at first there was nothing out of the ordinary compared to a regular witch. She spawned her skeletons, but then she spawned a wave of bats, and she would keep alternating between skeletons and bats every 7 seconds. On top of that, every troop she hit, she cursed, so when they were defeated, they turned into a cursed hog. She was pretty much the ultimate swarm card that was both really good on defense and offense. Now, like most of all the other super cards on this list, she was available again several times through the years in supercard draft challenges. Super Mini Pekka. The Super Mini Pekka launched in July 2022, but it was inspired by a killed card that was supposed to come out in 2016, the Mega Pekka. Basically, one of the iterations of that Mega Pekka was a Pekka that had insanely high damage, but with very little HP, so a glass cannon. This is basically what the Super Mini Pekka ended up being, and some. A mini Pekka with okay HP, it wasn't too low, insane damage, basically infinite, like it started at 100,000 at level 9, and with some extra abilities. Every 5 seconds, it would summon a pancake that would heal himself and nearby troops within a small radius. This pancake was basically like a heal spell that was removed a couple years back. He would also drop that same pancake every time he defeated an enemy. So as you could expect, it was a pretty hilarious card, being able to one-shot everything including towers. So one wrong move, or right, and the whole match was over. Barbarian Launcher. Also inspired by another scrapped card that was basically this hut looking thing with a mortar on top of it, and it would fire barbarians. Back in 2017, developers revealed that when playtesting this, they were just using a modified mortar that shot barbarians. And years later, in August 2022, this is exactly what the Barbarian Launcher became. This was more like if the mortar had a super card, because it still shot the mortar shells, but with a barbarian. But because the season was retro barbarian themed, it probably made more sense to call it the Barbarian Launcher rather than super mortar. Anyway, yeah, this card was pretty simple, just a mortar that shot barbarians. Nothing crazy. Santa Hog Rider. This was the last of the super cards released in 2022, and it was released in December 19th during the holidays inside the typical supercard challenge. The Sand Hog Rider had the same stats as a regular hog, of course costing an extra elixir and with an extra ability where every 3 seconds and 1 second after deployment, he'd spawn a present behind him. These presents were no ordinary presents, they were spells. It would open up and spawn one of 4 spells, a heal, rage, clone, or invisibility. As you could expect, this was probably one of the most RNG cards to be ever made because there was no real pattern in which spells it would drop, so 2 players playing the same exact deck could have dramatically different results. It was pretty goofy and made for some pretty hilarious matches that also made the challenge somewhat frustrating but also fun at times. Super Ice Golem. Released on the 9th of January 2023, unlike the Super Hog Rider, the Super Ice Golem's base stats were very different from a regular Ice Golem. It had way more HP, over double, and dealt about 50% more damage both on its hits and death damage. The only downside was that it was way slower, but that didn't really matter because it also had a unique ability of stunning everything when it went down for 4 seconds. The regular Ice Golem slows everything down, but this one stunned or froze everything, including the troops and towers for the opponent, for 4 seconds. And the cherry on top, it also activated the King Tower in the process. It was also quite large. I'm not really sure how much larger it was, but I'd say it was about 3 times the size. Interestingly, this ability ended up being sort of similar to what the Hero Ice Golem does, except that one creates a whole storm before freezing troops. Super Magic Archer. This is probably one of the most interesting and straight up hilarious supercards ever because of this. Yes, you could literally have the princesses and kings shooting at each other. So this card released in February 2023 and it was playable through a 2-stage challenge called Shoot Through the Heart. Its base stats were interesting. It hit faster and had higher hit points, but its area damage was set to 1. And the DPS was 0. This was because the ability is what could potentially cause the damage. Everything that the Super Magic Archer hit would essentially switch sides. So basically, it would make red troops blue. This also applied for your opponents, of course, so some pretty wacky things could happen, like accidentally taking out your own troops with a lightning, and even towers switching sides, which looks pretty cursed. So Princess Towers would target the king, and the king would also target them. It was pretty chaotic, and honestly hard to track which troops you dropped and which ones were converted, but of course, with all these challenges, it was all fun and games. Party Hut. This was released in March 2023 during the Goblin Party season, and it sure was a party with 2 temporary cards this season, and also because the game was turning 7. So the Party Hut was a super card that was a combination of many different cards. Basically, what the hut did was when spawned, it had a Dark Goblin on top of it, and this was very similar to how the Expo worked, with a slightly shorter range and obviously different stats. I believe it was in par with any ordinary Dark Goblin. When the hut was destroyed came the real party because 3 regular goblins spawned, 3 spears, and a goblin brawler from the Goblin Cage. Definitely seemed like at this point, Supercell was just trying to have fun and getting more creative with these temporary cards. Party Rocket. As mentioned, this was in the same month and season as the Party Hut, just released a couple weeks later for a separate challenge. Unlike most supercards, however, the Party Rocket was actually cheaper than a regular rocket, costing 1 elixir less. What made this one unique was that it didn't necessarily deal damage, it would simply convert everything into goblins. Yeah, no matter how much HP it had, it would insta-convert it. It didn't even have any damage stats. It looked quite empty in there. It also had a massive radius of 4 tiles, so it was very hard to miss anything. But the larger radius came with some downsides, because if you accidentally hit your own troops, they'd also be converted. So it literally meant anything, except the towers, of course. So you had to be very careful to not yeet your own troops out of existence. Super Archers. Released in 2023 in the bootcamp season, these super archers were pretty interesting. The elixir cost was the same as regular archers, but had dramatically different stats. Like their HP was about double of normal archers, but their damage was cut in half. This, of course, was to balance its ability, where it would shoot arrows that would push enemies back into one area. It had like a mini tornado effect. So even though they didn't deal much damage, troops struggled to do anything to them because they were constantly being pushed away. It's kind of like a air sweeper from Clash of Clans. I think their range was also longer than regular archers, so they were definitely very hard to counter unless it was with spells or something like an expo. Terry. This card was part of a collaboration with the Books of Clash series, an actual series of books that happened between May and June 2023 for both Clash Royale and Clash of Clans. Terry is the main character of Volume 1, and so that was why he was added as a temporary champion card. By the way, the first and only champion that was available for a limited time. Anyway, in the game, Terry was just a beefed up Hog Rider. He had more HP, dealt more damage, but what made him unique was his champion ability, of course. For one elixir, he would jump really high and slam back down, knocking troops out of the way and dealing area damage. It was sort of like the ability from the Mega Nut, but just not as strong. It was hilarious seeing him randomly jump up like that. The mechanics were definitely the best part of it, at least for me. But yeah, this one did not return outside of this event. He was sort of classified as a super card, a super champion, but he never appeared in any of these super draft challenges later on. Raging Prince. So there were actually several cards that had their own rage challenges, like the Red Rider and the Giant, to name a few. And basically, it was just the regular card, but they were raged. That's all. And the Prince had his own as well in September 2023. But what made me want to include the Raging Prince is that his rage wasn't like the others. It was sort of like a ramp up ability. Every 2 seconds, the rage effect would increase, being able to stack up to 3 times. To my knowledge, this was the only raging card that had this unique ability, because like I said, the others just had a regular raged effect, and that was all. So yeah, not really a totally different card, but a temporary card nonetheless. Warmth. This was a temporary spell that cost 1 elixir, and it was first available inside the Snowstorm Challenge in December 2023. It was a pretty fun card that only served one purpose: to defrost your troops in this Snowstorm Challenge. It also healed troops a little bit, but that wasn't really the point of it. During the snowstorm, your troops would freeze and you had to unfreeze them with this spell. Or not. I mean, you could literally queue up a push at the back and just let your troops sit frozen if you wanted. Yeah, because of that, a lot of people thought the game mode was pretty stupid, but others thought it was stupid fun. It was one of those things that it was so dumb that it was fun. Anyway, the card has returned every winter since in the exact same event, December 2024 and January 2026. Wizard Trio. This card is exactly what it sounds like. 3 wizards in 1. And it was available inside a challenge in May 2024 during the Magic Mayhem season. There wasn't much to this card though, it just spawned the 3 wizards. The ice one on the left, regular in the middle, and electro wizard on the right. For 7 elixir, it was pretty good, but I feel like there isn't much to say here. You know, they're just regular wizards together. You know what is interesting? In 2016, someone had the idea for this card and called it the Wizard Trio. Dude really predicted the future. He just got the elixir cost wrong, that's all. Rocket Silo. You know, I almost forgot to include this one because I thought the Party Rocket and this were the same, but no. This one released in July 2024 inside the Rocket Rumble Challenge during the Goblin Revolution season. It was basically a rocket that when deployed was stuck in the ground. So over time, you would see it try to wiggle its way out and eventually shoot a rocket at your king tower or theirs. The idea behind the challenge was that you had to destroy or defend the rocket before it launched, you know? It was kind of like a capture or defend the flag type deal. Maybe, I don't know, that's the best thing I could really think of. Sure, most games ended up being players just trying to cycle the rockets, but like I always say, these challenges are meant to be wacky and out of control. The rocket silo never appeared again after this one challenge. Baby Goblins. This was the first temporary tower troop that we got, and you could only use it in the Goblin Queen's Journey mode that was in the game from June 2024 to almost November 2024. So it was in the game for quite a while. Essentially, it was very similar to a Princess Tower. It had the same damage and it had slightly less HP, not too far off. This reduced HP allowed it to have a special ability where it synergized with the Goblin Queen. More on her in a bit, but when the ability was charged, baby goblins would be deployed. The tower troop unfortunately never came back, but hopefully someday they maybe add it back in an event or something. Goblin Queen. Another tower troop, but not necessarily one you could choose. She replaced the king in the Goblin Queen's Journey automatically. But I still thought it was worth a mention because she was a temporary troop in a sense. So compared to the king, it was basically the same, give or take, but she had an ability synergizing with the baby goblins, like I mentioned earlier, where as you deployed goblins, this bar would fill up, and when it was full, she launched a bunch of baby goblins into the arena. It was pretty cool. The whole goblin journey was pretty cool, I think. I wish I had played more during the time, but I was too busy with the old Clash of Clans. The Goblin Queen never came back, but she did appear as a merge tactics ruler. Is that what they're called? I haven't played in a bit. But yeah, she's in that game mode. Anyway, that's it. Those are all of the limited time cards we have gotten so far. There's probably gonna be more, of course, but these days, new ones are so far and few between, so who knows when that'll be. I think Supercell is currently hyper focused on permanent content that they can monetize, unfortunately. So yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, but hey, before you go, YouTube thinks you'll like this next one, so hey, check it out. As always, I hope you all have a blessed one. Peace.